There was another line that came up that I know that you both can speak on being pediatric SLPs. Uh, the host said this. She said that spelling, basically like using your body to point to a letter, is a gross motor skill, and verbally speaking is a fine motor skill.
Yeah, I'm sure
What are your thoughts on that
you're
Oh
seeing,
boy.
like,
breakdown?
me and
If you
Francie's
see
eyes
steam,
twitching on
yeah, our eyes twitching and
the
steam coming
video
out of
feed
our
Yeah.
right
ears.
now.
I'm gonna put some After
Yes.
Effects steam coat. Your face is gonna turn
Mhm.
red. Yeah.
Yeah, Francie,
Ugh.
I feel like you explain this really well, and you have, some good motor
Yeah.
speech knowledge, so
Yeah, that is a really gross simplification of a really complex process. Verbal communication lives between a linguistic or a language-based process as well as a motor-based process. And on top of that, if it is a motor-based process, it is like the finest of fine motor-based, so sure. There can be when we have a disorder of speech, when somebody is not speaking, there can be tons and tons and tons of reasons as to why that is. It's not always motor based. It can be motor based, but it can also be due to having a phonology issue, right? Which is the kind of language side of speaking. And it can be even greater than that. And so, or into different other language issues as well. And so to say that it is just a fine motor task is wrong. If you were to look at a brain under imaging when somebody is talking, it's triggering motor. Yes, it's targeting the motor band, but it's also targeting the language centers and it's also targeting memory. And it's just so much more complex than just to say, oh, it's just a fine motor task. That's why they can't do it. It has to be gross motor. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. No.
yeah. My favorite, real life example of why it's not that simple, excuse me, is a student that, I worked with in the past who had a diagnosis called childhood apraxia of speech, and this is a motor-based speech disorder. So, this student had a really difficult time coordinating his muscles correctly to form our speech sounds, and, yeah, it is pure and simple a motor-based speech disorder. However,
Mm.
this student could beatbox like crazy. So it that I think to me illustrates there is this layer of language that is always present when we're putting out speech. So he was using the same muscles in his mouth and the same kind of coordination mechanism to beatbox and could do so
Wow.
really well. But then when it came to the specific task of speech, he really, really struggled, and it's because speech isn't that simple. Another way to think about it would be, a person with a motor speech disorder like childhood apraxia of speech can usually eat and drink just fine. They might also have co-occurring dysphagia or feeding difficulties, but for the most part, kids with childhood apraxia of speech don't have a problem eating and drinking, and those, again, are the same muscles, the same
Mm.
coordination, but it doesn't have that layer of language over the top of it. So, yeah, like Francie said, saying that pointing is a gross motor movement and speech is a fine motor movement is a dramatic oversimplification of what speech actually
Yeah.
is.